All right. Welcome to episode 5. So, here we are going to talk about the origins of motion capture and also some of the latest trends in motion capture, such as AI, and also where we're heading with all this AI. And it's going to be more of a dialogue piece here, mainly because I have very strong ideas. And also, I've been cleaning up motion capture for 20 plus years. And I've seen a little bit of the curve of things and how things have changed. And there's a lot of stories and lessons to be learned from where motion capture was and where we at and where we going. So thanks, first and foremost, for joining me on this 5-episode series. And I hope you're taking a lot from this experience. And, I know it's compact, I know it's condensed, but I hope it serves you well. Now, the reason why this episode exists is because understanding where we've been helps us to understand where we're going. So starting from the beginning, motion capture started by basically rotoscoping reality into animation. For those that don't know, rotoscoping is very much like if you actually film somebody, you can then draw over those frames and basically copy those frames in the style that you want. So Walt Disney used to do this a bunch right at the beginning, and then they stopped. And also a bunch of movies have done it over the years as well. And rotoscoping nowadays in the animation community is seen as a no-no, but it serves a purpose because it gives you that fluidity of the naturalistic motion of motion capture. Plus, it saves time because, in the heads of a lot of people, if the motion is already there, you don't have to create anything. You just have to pick the frames that you want and then put it in game. So this is kind of how things started. And then after rotoscoping, we moved on into optical systems. And then we moved on to marker-based mocap. And this is kind of how we actually got to the point that we have now, where you have people in suits with little markers everywhere so it can be tracked. Now, the higher the production, the more markers you have. You might have seen some Hollywood movies having all kinds of colors and markers on their suits. And the reason why is the more points you have to mark, the more precise your data is, but also the more things you need to track. So in a lot of Hollywood movies, they have weapons, they have props, they have all kinds of stuff that they need to track. You might have seen a facial rig of a cam to capture the face. You might have seen that the face actually has more dots than usual. And that's because there's so many things happening with your face. So the setups are actually evolving as we move through the times. Now, I want to go back to a time where there was no mocap. And this is basically late 90s, early 2000s. And I remember perfectly when mocap came along. It was seen almost like a big splash on basically the games industry, but even bigger in Hollywood. And it felt very much like mocap was going to be the end of animation. And it's actually quite interesting because now we're at this inflex point in history where we're looking at AI the same way. And I feel like in history, there's been many points like this, such as when people used to paint and draw, and then cameras came along. And all of a sudden, if you can take a picture of everything, then what is the use of drawing anything? And things have happened this way in history for a long time, and mocap was definitely one of those. If you can capture the body and you can capture realistic movement, then what is the point of somebody actually kind of animating these things by hand, right? And this is basically 2D was worried about it, 3D, which was just in its infancy, was also worried about it. But then years went by, and as you can tell, nowadays, and let's talk about the present, people see mocap as a tool. Motion capture is just another tool that you have to capture movement, and it basically serves as basically a filter of what you want to do with your game. Do you want to make your game realistic? Cool, let's go mocap. If you want to make your game stylistic, perhaps it's better to go hand key, or you can go mocap and stylize the motion capture. But studios now have options, and options are always good. And I don't think nowadays there's any animator out there that thinks that motion capture is a threat to their job as an animator. Nowadays, at least from what I get, most animators want to learn motion capture as it becomes another notch in their armor so they can then actually know how to actually clean up mocap and have more availability and more jobs available to them, right? And when it comes to software, hopefully by now you can see that having just the motion capture, just the data by itself, is no use to us. I mean, it is of some use, but you need to massage it. So enter the software. And I do think that Motion Builder and Maya have been absolutely crucial to get us to this point, which is why I appreciate the work that Autodesk has done. I know that this series is sponsored by Autodesk for sure, but I do think that there are linchpins in the industry, because if you look back to the very beginning, when, there was Alias Wave from Maya, right, which was completely different from Autodesk, that that piece of software, which was very specific, was what kind of spurred Motion Builder. Motion Builder then became a staple for motion capture, and it was the only software people used to use for motion capture because it's the only one that could actually render so much data, so many keys. And then eventually Maya started getting it. And now we have Maya, you have Motion Builder, Blender can handle motion capture. So many things have happened since that now motion capture has become a commodity. Like, you're no longer worried about motion capture becoming too heavy, or your computer crashing, or your Maya crashing because it just renders normally. That used to be something that I used to face all the time when I started my career, and Maya used to crash and Motion Builder used to crash, and it was because the data was too heavy, there was too many keys, and you had to process things before you got it into Maya. It was a whole thing. Nowadays, you don't have to deal with that, which is amazing. So I think these two pieces of software, Motion Builder and Maya, are going to continue to be staples for motion capture going forward because of their accessibility, right? If you're a studio looking for a tool out of the box that actually does everything for you with motion capture, then maybe Motion Builder is for you. But if you're a studio that has their own pipelines and has very clever engineers and very clever pipelines, then Maya is the software for you, because you can start plugging things on this backend, and therefore you can start getting more out of the software as well. Now, as you saw from the interview with Goodbye Kansas, there's a lot of great things happening as well at the studio level, at capture level as well. They are at the cutting edge of the technology, motion capture technology, having incredible amount of cameras, having incredible spaces that are really, really big with multiple actors, both cinematic and gameplay. And I do think that having studios that can actually, be at a cutting edge of capturing motion capture means that us as animators, as developers, we get the best motion to work with for our games. And this is independent if it's going to be more realistic or more stylized. Having really good quality motion capture ends up benefiting everybody. And I do think that having studios like Goodbye Kansas that actually take pride in the work that they do by delivering the cleanest motion capture possible data, then it becomes really, really good and makes everybody's job easy, right? So it's cool to see that side of things as well. And then ultimately, today you have really dedicated motion capture actors. So when I started, at least when you had an actor, actors could do acting, but then they would ask it as well for actors to then move around. And when I started, we animators as well used to actually get into the volume and then capture. I've been in many studios already that we had to suit up and put the markers on and then capture some movement, right? And that was really, really cool. And it's happening less and less. And the reason why is because now you can actually get professionals that can actually capture the motion for you. And if you have a budget, then getting a mocap actor goes a long way. And one of the best ways that I saw that I've actually witnessed the value of a good motion capture actor is in the longevity. It's in how long they actually can sustain lots of effort. So I have worked with actors that basically want to be motion capture actors, and they are not two of the same. So there's actually performance actors that actually just act out and are good, and you can actually shoot with them for a couple of days perhaps, and it's no problem. But if you're going to do, like I've done many times, a 5-day shoot, right? Or maybe a 2-week shoot or a month-long shoot, meaning that maybe you have a shoot and then a break and then 5 days and then a break. Those shoots are really taxing on the body. And the mocap actors that have been in the industry for a long time, they'll be able to do that with no problem. But normally when it comes to performance actors, they normally feel very achy. So it becomes a problem because you as the director, you as the person that wants the data, you just want them obviously to just perform the stuff they want as best as possible. But if you are on the 4th or 5th day and the person is already tired, and cannot actually jump as high as you ask them to, or cannot do a roly-poly the way you want it to, then it becomes a problem. It becomes like you not getting the acting that you wanted, so therefore you're just wasting your time. So having a good motion capture actor that is specific for motion capture, that can give you the stuff that you're actually asking consistently, is a skill in itself. So do not undermine them. They are really cool. And I highly appreciate a really good motion capture actor. So shout out to them for sure. The future of motion capture. This is an interesting one because I do think that the future is bright for motion capture, but like everything else in society nowadays, I think we're going to have elements of AI to motion capture. And you can start seeing it percolating through by this like motion capture devices that you have nowadays, that you can use your phone and put it on a tripod and then capture your movements. And then based on the camera of the phone that is super high fidelity, you can get okay data, right? Data that you can start working. And as we stated here in this channel, and as we stated here in this course, no matter how dirty the data is, you can always clean it up to a point that is good enough. So these things will become better, and AI is just going to facilitate our way of actually capturing mocap. And I think you're going to actually basically have cheaper and cheaper gear to basically capture motion capture. And I think this is beautiful because one of the biggest barriers that you have right now for capturing motion capture is the price. Every single camera costs crazy money, and then you have to have a volume that is big enough, a space that is big enough to actually capture certain things. You have to have a certain amount of cameras. So it can become quite expensive quite quickly. And I do think making it more affordable means that it's accessible to more people, and it means that we get better animations, better data, and better games as a result, or better film, or better VFX, whatever you actually decided to use it for. But I do think that point of entry is important, and getting something that is cheap or is cheaper than it is right now, I think it's important for motion capture to be widely available for everybody to use, and then everybody to start working on their data, because the way we're going with animation in games, at the very least, at least that's what I think, is that we need more animation in order to get things to be more polished. So any AAA game that you see out there that has amazing animations, doesn't matter if it's Uncharted or Horizon, Spider-Man, normally they end up with a bunch of different animations. And I'm talking about hundreds or thousands of animations in order to allow everything to blend really well, in order to allow for the transitions to work really well, in order to add variations for the animations. So even if you have a walk cycle or an idle that actually looks a certain way, if you look at it as a player too many times, it becomes repetitive. So the idea of the game is to actually create variations so things don't become repetitive. So even if you have an amazing set of animations, you'll eventually have to do another 2 or 3, 4 different variations in order to actually get that stiffness or that sameness away from the game, right? So this is why I think that these games can become so expensive. And nowadays we are at the point that games are becoming more and more expensive. One of the biggest ways that you can save money is by making mocap more affordable for everybody. Now, something that I need to talk about here is definitely like the suits that you can get, the mocap suits that you can get nowadays that are normally inertia based. Basically means that there's no markers, but the way you move, it gets translated to the computer, and they are not as precise as going to mocap volume with cameras and markers, but they give you better data than you on your phone. So I think those things will also become better over time. And I do think that investing in one of those, if you're serious about making a game, if you're serious about being an indie game developer, and if you want to actually capture mocap, I highly suggest you guys invest in one of those. I really like the Rococo suit. I think that's really, really good. Check it out. And also the Accent suit is really good as well. But I do think those things will also get better and more affordable as we go forward in this motion capture, because I can tell after the suits came along and after these mobile applications that you can capture with no suit came along, there's more people than ever now cleaning up mocap, using mocap, exploring mocap, which is beautiful to see. And the problem with that is that if you start using packs of motion capture from somebody, you start to hit a ceiling on how much mocap can you actually use, and you start to want to create your own motion capture, especially if you're working on your own game. And this is when the suits become super, super useful. I am looking forward to seeing the development in these suits. I am looking forward to seeing where these things go because they not only make you look cool, well, I think, but also they give you really good data for you to work with. So I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. I'm going to go through the takeaways that I hope you guys took from this. In episode 1, hopefully you took away the fact that mocap is not just for the big studios. It's actually quite accessible for everybody depending on your budget and depending on how serious you are about motion capture. In episode number 2, hopefully your takeaway was that motion capture can be challenging, but with the right tools such as Motion Builder and Maya, you can actually solve most of them, especially with specialized plugins that go on top of certain things, because you can streamline your process. Also, incredibly important for you to select the software that you're going to stick to from the very beginning. Make some research, take your time, because changing software midway through your development is an absolute pain. In episode number 3, the takeaway was that motion capture is an integral part of production, meaning that like every studio out there, game studio needs to have animation in their game. And therefore, depending on the studio and depending on the game, you normally have to have motion capture part of that animation system in some way or another, becoming better at the workflow, at the planning. All of those things are super important for you to keep sanity as you go through your process of game development, because the more you develop games, the more files start exploding in terms of size. And if you're not really prepared and haven't planned and haven't worked out your pipeline, then things get really complicated. And I do know of a lot of studios out there that unfortunately, they don't have the best pipelines. And this is why a lot of mistakes are made. And the better and more clean the pipeline, the more effortless everything feels, which is really amazing. And in episode 4, we interviewed Go by Kansas here, so you can actually have a real live studio kind of like telling you how they use motion capture. So hopefully you can daydream to either work with them or use data like them, because there's nothing better than going to a studio, going to a volume and working with talent, especially in person. Because I'm always psyched every time that I have to do a mocap shoot and I have to meet like my co-director, I have to meet the actors that I'm going to work with and how we're going to plan out things and having their take on certain takes. It's really fun. And normally by the end of the day, you are exhausted, but you know you're actually going to get amazing data and you get super excited to see how things are going to look in game. And that bridge, that mental bridge that you have to go through while you're shooting mocap is so much fun. And that wraps up this mini-series on motion capture. Now, some of the resources that you can use out there to continue your journey is a self-plug, and apologies, but I do have a course on motion capture for games that goes incredibly more in depth. It has like lots and lots of video, and we actually also talk about motion capture actors, and there's lots of stuff for you to take there. So I'll leave a link down below. Hopefully you guys can actually check it out. And if you're going to join me, feel free to join me, and there's much more information there. Autodesk has also a lot of resources. Check the links down below, and I wish you well in your motion capture journey. It's a lot of fun. It's not as daunting as people think, and if you are an animator, you should not be scared of it, because it just becomes another tool in your belt that you can use later on, or makes you more hireable as well. Until the next time, I wish you well, and as always, stay well, stay safe. Peace.